Logan, everybody, I'm Roger Hoover. Glad to welcome you back to the Crimson Tide Sports Network, and welcome to this Thursday edition of Crimson Drive, driven by Tuscaloosa Toyota. Make sure you check them out online at TuscaloosaToyota.com as the regular season and SEC championship game complete for the Alabama Crimson Tide. Now it's time for a berth in the college football playoff, and we're glad to be with you as we're talking not only Crimson Tide football, but also women's basketball, men's basketball on this very busy edition of Crimson Drive, again driven by Tuscaloosa Toyota. Check them out, TuscaloosaToyota.com. Our friends at RJ Young have provided us with this smart board to go through all of the different headlines that we have today. The headlines are always presented by RJ Young. They are the official technology solutions provider of Crimson Drive. First of all, coming up on the show today, we will take you to Atlanta and take you inside the booth as Eli Gold, John Parker Wilson, Chris Stewart, Rashad Johnson called the SEC championship game. You'll see all the big highlights from the booth can coming up first of Alabama's win over Georgia to win the program's 29th SEC championship. Then we'll be joined by John Parker Wilson, who you'll see in the highlights, but he'll also break down the win against Georgia and take a look at not only what's coming next for the Crimson Tide football team, but also for Bryce Young at the Heisman ceremony on Saturday. Then we'll be joined by Alabama women's basketball head coach Kristy Curry as her team keeps on winning a 6-game winning streak that included a road victory last Sunday against Chattanooga. Following that, we'll be joined by Bryan, Passink, our radio analyst for men's basketball here on the network, to talk about the big win. Crimson Tide collected over third-ranked Gonzaga in Seattle on Saturday. Taking a look at the Crimson Tide football team, of course, the win against Georgia, the number one ranked team in the country. Alabama picks up the victory 41-24 in the SEC championship game. So with that, Alabama is now number one in the country, according to the College Football Playoff Committee, and they are the 1 seed for the playoff. Will face the 4 seed Cincinnati Bearcats coming up at 2:30 on New Year's Eve day. It'll be 2:30 kickoff. Our airtime will be 11:30 across the network coming up in the Cotton Bowl from Dallas. So we're looking forward to that as Alabama tries to get back to the national championship game and try and defend the national championship. We've already seen the Crimson Tide defend the SEC championship from a year ago. On Sunday, the Crimson Tide football team had their annual awards banquet, and 4 permanent captains were named this season. They'll be, of course, having their names and footprints and handprints at Denny Chimes coming up. Bryce Young, Will Anderson Jr., Evan Neal, Fedarian Mathis earning that honor, and more honors keep rolling in for Bryce Young. He has been named a finalist for the 2021 Heisman Trophy, but there's the College Football Awards coming up tonight. Earlier in the week, Will Anderson Jr. won the Bronco Nagurski Award for the top defensive player in the nation, and just awards keep rolling in for the Crimson Tide football team, and we hope that certainly continues. We also hope the men's basketball team keeps winning, because last Saturday defeating number 3 Gonzaga by the final score of 91-82 at the Battle in Seattle, at the home of the Seattle Kraken Climate Pledge Arena. It was sold out. Mostly Gonzaga fans were there, but the Crimson Tide, even though Gonzaga would chip away, make it a 4-point game late in the ball game, Crimson Tide always had the answer, many times coming from Jaden Shackelford. He's the SEC Player of the Week as he hit 6 3-pointers in the first half, had a career-high 28 points. Great to see that for Shaq, as well as J.D. Davison. Now back-to-back games, he's setting new career highs, 13 points against Miami, followed it up with 20 points against Gonzaga. He's the SEC Freshman of the Week. Alabama back in the top 10, now ranked 9th in the country, and coming up on Saturday, we want you here at Coleman Coliseum for a late-night tip-off, 9 o'clock, while our radio airtime will be 8 o'clock across the network. But home against number 14 Houston, a team that was in the Final Four a season ago. They have a wonderful basketball team again this season, so we can't wait for Alabama basketball to be home coming up here in Tuscaloosa. Crimson Tide women's basketball team, they spent a lot of time at home in Tuscaloosa, had 5 wins in a very quick stretch of about 10 days for the Crimson Tide, and last Sunday they left the Yellowhammer State, went just over the border to Tennessee and into Chattanooga, picked up an 80-64 win over the Mocs as Jamia Mingo Young led the charge, career-high 26 points. She also had 11 rebounds in the win. Now Alabama not playing a game this week due to exams, but coming up next Monday, home against Sam Houston, 11:30 a.m. for the 5th grade fast break, as Coleman Coliseum will be filled to the brim with 5th graders yelling at every single point and rebound. So we're looking forward to that coming up. And also coming up, we'll be hearing from the head coach of the Crimson Tide, Kristy Curry, to get a rundown on the season so far, as we still only have a handful of non-conference games left before Alabama starts SEC play right after the Christmas holiday. But again, coming up today on Crimson Drive, driven by Tuscaloosa Toyota, we'll start with a look back at the win for the Crimson Tide in the SEC championship game in Atlanta. Here are the booth cam highlights, and remember to watch the booth cam on the Crimson Tide Sports Network Facebook page like you're watching right now. But let's go to the highlights with the voice of the Crimson Tide, Eli Gold, on the call.
Welcome, everybody, again to Mercedes-Benz Stadium here in Atlanta, Georgia. The Alabama Crimson Tide and the Georgia Bulldogs in the SEC Championship game. Two wides to the left side. Everybody in tight, including the tight end on the right. Bennett gets the snap, backpedals to the 20. He looks, he's under pressure. He's going down. That was Dallas Turner. Here's a 3rd and 2. Alabama from their own 33-yard line. Bryce gets the snap. Looks, waits, wide open across the middle. Accelerating. Here comes the defender. They're not going to get there. Jamison Williams. Touchdown, Alabama. 67 yards.
Jamison Williams cannot stress how fast this guy is.
Wow.
Once he gets the ball, Georgia uncovers him. He's wide open in the middle of the field. Bryce is able to find him, but he turns on the afterburners, and he's gone. And Jamison Williams, who came in averaging 20 yards a catch right now, he's going to surpass that. But what a score from Alabama. Coming back, answering it, keeping us in this ballgame.
Here's the snap. Bryce steps back under pressure, looks left side. Mechie is there. He'll make the grab and then gets thrown out of bounds near midfield. That was pretty. Robinson now in the backfield. They throw right side screen. Taken by Williams. Turns the corner. He's got room down the right side. And he'll take down a bunch of folks on the sideline, but gives Alabama a huge gainer down inside the 30 to the 28-yard line.
Yeah, let's just keep finding ways.
Get that ball
to
him.
Get the ball to Jamison Williams. Nice block outside from Slade Bolden. Then Billingsley comes up and puts a pop on the safety. But, man, it was just a two inches away from breaking that tackle for a touchdown. This guy's a tough one to move.
Yeah.
Look, maybe start sprinkling in some tosses. We saw that last week against Auburn.
Bolden in motion, goes to the right, now doubles back behind the quarterback and the running back. Here's Bryce waiting, looks under pressure, sees running room, he's going to take off, shovels it to Robinson, right side, first down, inside the 15-yard line. Oh my! Here's a 2nd and 10 from the 13. Bryce stands in, looks, throws, corner of the end zone. Touchdown, Alabama! Touchdown, John Mechie. He was 7 yards deep in the end zone, cutting across to the far side, and he just threw that into the smallest of spots. And John Mechie with a 13-yard reception, putting Alabama on top.
And Bryce puts it on a rope. He starts his reads to the left side. Mechie's got a post, but the play breaks down, and he goes towards the back of the end zone, the back line, and starts running it out. So Bryce has to put it on a laser to get that before it goes out of bounds. Perfect spot for Bryce Young.
3rd and 10 from their own 38-yard line. 1:20 to go in the half. We're tied at 17 in the SEC Championship game. Here's Bryce Young, gets the snap, backpedals, looks, throws the out route. It'll be caught by Mechie. First down up the right sideline and out of bounds at the Georgia 45. Bama from the Georgia 25. Bryan Robinson to the left of his quarterback. Here's the snap. Pressure up the middle. A throw, far side, caught, Bolden. He'll come down at the 11. Christian Leary now is in a wide receiver. Excuse me, a tailback. He'll go to the right side of his quarterback. Here's Bryce stepping up. Running room. He's got it. He's going to go all the way. Touchdown, Alabama. Touchdown, Alabama. From their own 45, going left to right. Two wides on the far side. Bryce has tons of time. Steps back. Looks long. Throws. Jamison Williams behind the defense. He's got it. Touchdown, Alabama. Touchdown, Alabama. And Jamison then goes over towards the student section for Alabama and lets them take their pictures. 55 yards. What a throw. What a catch. Alabama pads their lead. It's now 30 to 17. If you're curious, Bennett's been intercepted 5 times this year. A Bama fan would like to see it become number 6. Bennett looks, throws, intercepted, and Helms. Intercepted Helms. I don't want to say I told you so, but DeMarco Helms comes up with his 3rd interception of the year. He had one against Southern Miss, one against Texas A&M, and neither of those were as huge as this one right here.
Yeah, it was Bryan started the play, stayed at home, had the flat defender covered up, so Stetson Bennett has to go across the middle of the field and just forces it.
And Will Anderson in his face played a major role in enforcing it as well.
It's the 8th play of this drive, and now Georgia's 22 minutes of possession to our 16. So our defense has been out there a lot, but they've stood strong right here in the red zone. That's where it matters the most.
3 wides right, 2 to the left, empty backfield. Bennett stands in, looks, throws into the end zone. The big tight end cannot hang on. Brock Bowers had it, but then could not hang on. Here's a 4th and 9 from the 19. 2 seconds to go in the third quarter. If the Bama defense comes up large, this will be huge. Here now the snap. Bennett under pressure. Bennett's hit as he throws. The ball falls harmlessly. Incomplete inside the 5-yard line. And Alabama will take over on downs. Empty backfield. Bama shows blitz. Now they back off. Stetson Bennett will audible. Clap his hands. Gets the snap. He looks and throws. Intercepted Alabama. Intercepted Jordan Battle. Down the left side. 15, 10, 5. Touchdown! Touchdown, Alabama! The second pick of the day thrown by Stetson Bennett. And for Battle, it'll be his 3rd interception of the year, his 2nd pick 6.
Rashad Battle read it perfect. It was a blitz on the weak side for the defense. 2 linebackers blitzing, but Battle just read the play the whole entire way, stepping in front of that for the pick.
Read it perfectly, playing in the middle of the field, understanding that we're bringing pressure, knowing that the quarterback has to go with his first read. He sees it, drives it, and makes the play.
A 42-yard try right smack dab between the hash marks. Good spot after the good snap, and the kick is up and good. As the Tide now goes up 41-24. The Crimson Tide will take the victory formation. There's the knee. And Alabama has again done the job. You know, folks, the more things change, the more they remain the same. Alabama is still Alabama. Unreal. Alabama wins it 41-24. What a ball game. What a football team.
What a fun time in the booth for the SEC Championship game on Saturday against the Georgia Bulldogs. And one of the most prominent members of our team in the booth cam highlights, of course, is our color analyst, John Parker Wilson, as he, of course, broke down the game on Saturday. Now he joins us on Crimson Drive to talk about what we saw from Alabama against Georgia, plus what's ahead for this football team and Bryce Young here in 2021. John Parker, what a memorable Saturday in Atlanta. Just what'd you see from the Crimson Tide getting it done against number 1 Georgia?
Yeah, it was a pretty special day, you know, coming in as underdogs the first time in a long, long time, but really came out of the gates, I think, with something to prove. I love the attitude and the intensity of this team that they came out with. I think really carrying it from that comeback overtime win against Auburn, carrying that momentum into this game. You know, fell behind early, but came back and just put all the burners on and I think showed everybody why we should be the number 1 team in the country.
Alabama, of course, trailed nearly the entire game against Auburn and also trailed 10-0 against Georgia. What were some of the key plays that helped turn things around in the first half for the Crimson Tide?
You know, I think this team is resilient. They've had their backs against the ropes at times this year where, you know, in the past we've kind of, I think, been out in the lead and had that lead most of the game. But, you know, whether it was A&M or even the LSU, close game against Arkansas, able to come back against Auburn. To me, it's just the resiliency of getting behind and saying it's going to be okay. Knowing how good our offense is with Bryce Young and with Jamison Williams, the explosiveness that we do have, you know, it was those big plays that Jamison caught. Mechie scored a big touchdown. So our big players are really stepping up in these big games and none bigger than Bryce Young. I mean, the way that he has really played this entire year, but especially down the stretch when we needed him the most. He continues to step up and to really shine. I mean, not only throwing the ball, but showing how elusive he is running the ball also.
And for Bryce Young to have success getting the ball to all the playmakers you just mentioned, you got to have good play on the offensive line. And that was a huge question mark going into the SEC championship game. They answered the bell, not allowing any sacks to Georgia. Just what'd you see from that group and how have they had such a quick turnaround?
Unbelievable, right? 7 sacks against Auburn, and then coming against the SEC championship, the best defensive front seven, according to most in the entire country, and really locked them down. I mean, Seth McLaughlin came in, second start ever at center. Ekiyor came back at right guard, and then Owens was the right tackle. And I think they played their best game of the entire year. The way they picked up the blitz, the way they handled the pressures that Georgia was thrown at to them, and really just manhandling up front. I think that was the biggest thing. We, as Coach Saban would always say, we imposed our will on the Georgia front seven, and really did it all day long. And I came into the game saying, if we can block and give Bryce Young some time, we're going to have a chance to win. And they did it. And that was to me was the key of the game was locking down it up front. They won the battle up front in the trenches, and in big games, especially SEC games, it always comes down to that.
We also saw that for Alabama's defensive line, the linebackers, the secondary. What can you tell us about what you saw from the performance of Alabama's defense on Saturday?
Entire defensive performance, I think. Big plays, Jordan Battle, pick six. I mean, these kind of things, turnovers change games, especially when you can create a turnover and then put points in the end zone. Even coming back from dropping an interception, I think it was the first or the second drive where he had a chance, and if he caught the ball, he was walking to the house also. Able to get back to the passer a few times. And I think depth, especially up front on the defensive line, is really showing up right now. Seeing guys like DJ Dale, Tim Smith has played a lot more. LeBron Ray's come back into the game. Obviously, Will Anderson just continue to be a force, forcing double teams at times, a lot of times. Young guys like Dallas Turner, who stepped up with a couple of injuries to that position. The front right now has really, I think, gotten into a good groove of rotations, playing a lot of guys, and then Phil Mathis, a guy who's been a captain basically every game for this season, was awarded a captain at the end of the year by his teammates. His energy, to me, really sparks this defense.
Crimson Tide defense held strong, defeating Georgia. So Alabama moves on to the college football playoff, #1 overall seed, now taking on #4 Cincinnati coming up as we're headed back to Dallas. That was a good spot for us last year in the semifinals. I know you're still a few weeks out from the game, but you got to be really fired up about that matchup to try and get back to the national championship game.
Yeah, it's a familiar place for us. These guys have been there. They were there last year for what was the Rose Bowl when they moved it out of California, played in Dallas. So it's a familiar venue. These guys have been here. And, everything that this team went through this year of people doubting them, of not playing the level, I think a lot of the players you would expect and kind of heard that when they did have media availability. You take that win against Auburn and then the win against Georgia. And I think, say, guys, we got 1 month. We got 1 month to continue doing this, to sure up some things. We've got a huge injury at Mechie, so get some new guys, Ja'Cory Brooks. We've seen Trayshawn Holden play a pretty good bit, get guys healthy like JoJo Earl, Brian Robinson, and develop them and say, hey, we got a month. Let's get ready, put our heads down, because Cincinnati's a good team. They got a lot of draftable talented guys on that team. And being from a group of 5 conference, this is huge. I mean, this is huge for not only them, they're representing that group of 5, being the first team to come in and be a part of the playoffs. So, probably expect some different things, and they're going to be prepared also and showing some things that you hadn't shown all year. Not that they've saved anything, but kind of this is time to reinvent yourself, come up with some new plays, and put something fun out there. I mean, this is going to be a good game, a fun game, I think, playing an opponent that we usually wouldn't play.
So that's certainly good for the Crimson Tide moving on to the college football playoff as the winner of the SEC championship. Let's talk briefly about Georgia on the other side of the coin, because they're #1 team all season long, had so much invested emotionally in trying to beat Alabama and kind of get that monkey off their back. How do you feel like Georgia's going to respond against Michigan?
Well, I think if I'm Georgia and if we were in that situation of being the #1 team, you say, guys, we still got everything ahead of us that we've tried to play for all season long. And the time off for them, I think it's going to help, because you can take a step back and say, we played one bad game. We faced a good opponent, didn't play as well as we wanted to for whatever reason. And then you I don't think Georgia changes a lot. I don't think they need to change a lot. I know they've got Stetson Bennett and JT Daniels, so it'd be interesting to see how Kirby plays that and see who's out there for quarterback. But they've got great talent, and now even if it was Alabama, you'd say, let's just get it back together. We can get that monkey off our back. We were number one all season long and had to listen to that. Well, now you're not. Now you can kind of get back to the basics and say, let's just go play football. We're playing a Big Ten team. We match up really well against them. And then if we do beat them, we get a chance to go beat Alabama again or get a chance to play them again, which I think would be a great matchup, a rematch. You never like playing teams again, but this is a really good Georgia team. And now they don't have that just number one that they have to deal with. I mean, that, whether you address it publicly or not, it's something the players and coaches and everybody thinks about. So now they can just play football.
Well, of course, you're a former Crimson Tide quarterback, and Bryce Young has an opportunity to be the first Alabama quarterback to win a Heisman Trophy coming up on Saturday. Just as a representative of that very small fraternity of former Tide quarterbacks, what would it mean to you to see Bryce take home that award?
Man, I hope he does. He's played so well this season. He's done everything right. Such a leader for this team, a gracious guy when he's in the media, somebody that's just very infectious. And for him to be the first one after the seasons he's had, it would be fantastic. I mean, I'm pulling for him so hard. To be huge for the Alabama, be huge for him. And back-to-back with Devontae winning the Heisman last year, Mac Jones coming so close. I think it would be fun for Mac to have him win it also, of a guy that learned from him, that studied for him, learned how to do it the right way, because it is. I mean, this is an award for everybody, every Alabama fan there is. And I think he's going to be the first. I really do. He's put up the numbers. He's played so well and means so much to this team. I mean, the comeback win against Auburn and then to just have the performance he did against Georgia. It's been a special season, and I hope he gets rewarded for it.
Certainly are. Well, John Parker Wilson, thank you so much for joining us here on Crimson Drive this afternoon to talk about Alabama beating Georgia in the SEC Championship. Who knows? We may do this again coming up playoff time, but thanks again for your time, and Roll Tide.
Thank you, bud. Roll Tide.
John Parker Wilson talking about Alabama Crimson Tide football as the weekend really got going with the football team. That big upset of Georgia in the SEC championship game. The men's basketball team followed it up with a win against Gonzaga. We'll touch on that in a moment with Bryan Passink, another one of our radio analysts. But right now we want to go to the head coach of the Crimson Tide women's basketball team, Kristy Curry, because on Sunday it was her basketball team on the road in Chattanooga, making sure it was a winning weekend for Tide Athletics with an impressive victory against the Chattanooga Mocs. And it is final exam week, but this is also almost a midterm style report that we get from Coach Curry learning about the women's basketball team, as we only have a handful of non-conference games left before SEC play starts on December 30th. So here's our conversation with Tide head coach Kristy Curry. Coach, Roll Tide. It's great to see you. How is everything during exam week for your team?
It's great. Roll Tide, Roger.
Well, we're certainly glad to see the wins keep coming in for Alabama. Good winning streak at the moment. Just what are you liking about your team's play on the floor?
We've been able to get a lot of different combinations together. Obviously, 7 games in 15 days. I'm excited for our team this week to kind of get their legs back under them and finish finals strong. But we've also gone back to work on the fundamentals. So this is a team, where the biggest room in the house right now for them is the room for improvement. And so the more minutes, the more challenges we can present daily in practice, and come game time, the better we'll become.
We've seen Alabama this season get a lot of steals. That's led to a lot of quick points down the floor. Alabama's been leading the SEC in steals throughout the year. Just what's led into that, and what have you liked about your defense?
Well, we've tried to put more of an emphasis on the defensive side of the ball here in the summer and headed into the fall. I feel like, we've done a great job offensively, being top 10 in a lot of categories in the country. But one of the biggest weaknesses of our program a year ago was just defensively, finding ways to understand scout tendencies better, finding ways to have our hands high and active, constantly just communicating, just improvement, and all the little things fundamentally defensively. It's not complicated. It's going back to the basics, and for your team to take a lot of pride in on the defensive end. So it's something we really emphasize and will continue to emphasize as we head into SEC play.
One of the best players in terms of getting steals for you has been Jamia Mingo Young. She had a terrific performance last time out against Chattanooga with 26 points, 11 rebounds. Just what is she doing well at this point?
Well, she just brings an edge, and a toughness. She's extremely active. She loves to play defense as much as she does offense. And this day and time, sometimes that's kind of rare. But she just loves to feed from the defensive end. And we knew coming in that was one of her strengths. We recruited her hard out of high school, and knew that she really, really enjoys playing defense. And I think that's something that it's been contagious with our team. We often put her on the best offensive player. We'll put her on the ball. We'll start things up top. And she's done a great job with that. We just want to make sure she stays out of foul trouble, and she's done a good job so far. And we continue to just, need her energy on the defensive side of the ball.
She's a transfer from Mississippi State that's had a great impact. Another one in the starting five has been Jada Rice coming in from NC State. What have you liked about her play?
Just the, she's got a great motor. I love, post players sometimes can be a little bit lazy, and not to criticize, but her pace is really, really good. Matter of fact, some of the mistakes that she'll make is because she's too active or too over anxious or trying too hard. But just her energy, too. I just talked about Jamia's energy, but, Jada just plays so hard from free throw line to free throw line. It's, experience with her. She just needs experience, and she's been able to get some valuable minutes and have some big games. I know she's searching for consistency, and we are as well, but she just, again, you don't have to cut your effort. And I think that's important when you're dealing with the post player.
When we talked before the season, we talked a lot about the leadership that point guard Hannah Barber has, as well as Megan Abrams. How have you seen them carry this team as leaders early in the year?
Just being vocal, and they're our hardest workers. We really don't have to coach effort with this group. And it really starts with Meg and Hannah, and it goes from there. And they're just really vocal. I think they've had a lot of experiences. I think the best leaders, are those that have had a chance to watch those around them. Take the things they way alike from them, and the things that they don't want to use, don't use. But I think both of them have had, a lot of experiences in the past, and they've really, really become good leaders for the experiences they've had. And we just continue to have them step up day in and day out, be vocal, be the hardest workers, have the most energy. They've always got a smile on their face. They're both outstanding in the classroom, the court, and the community, and they're great role models. And, they speak things into action every day with their energy and effort.
When we've seen some of the great shooting performances from Megan Abrams, what is she doing the best when she's able to get 20-plus points like we've seen on a few occasions this year?
Well, what she's done is she's learned how to counter. What you take away, I'm going to counter back with. And, if you take away the drive, she's really worked hard on her shot. If you take away the shot, she's going to put it on the floor. And she just, she's real crafty. Meg really understands and has grown as a player on whatever the defense takes away. I'm just like I said, I'm going to counter it. And so, continue to work on the defensive side of the ball and her mindset with that. We're going to really need her help defensively as we head into SEC play. And staying healthy. But what she's done, she's going to graduate this Saturday morning. We're so proud of her. She'll automatically, Meg, one word with Meg is legacy. She wants to leave a legacy at Alabama. And I think at this day and time, a lot of players don't understand that word. And Meg is a giver. She continues to give back. She continues to impact the university and the community and the program, and going to graduate this Saturday and then start her master's degree. We're just so proud of her.
Absolutely. And so far, we've touched on a lot of your starters, along with Brittany Davis, who continues scoring at a high level. But how about Alabama off the bench? You came into the season thinking that the depth would be there as you wanted it for this group. What have you seen out of Alabama's bench so far this year?
We've had highs and lows and a little bit of in-betweens. I think, we'll just go to our bench based off scouting tendencies. But I've been really pleased with Myra Gordon's growth, Kyla Wade Warren's growth. Nia's been battling some bugs lately. We're hoping to get her back healthy this week and get her back in the swing of things and the flow. We're going to need some minutes here or there from Allie Craig. We're going to need them to be productive. Ruth Kahn coming off the bench a minute or two here or there. Taylor Sutton, one of the most improved players on our team. So we do like our depth. And as you've seen, we've tried to and we'll continue to go to our bench. I thought at Chattanooga on Sunday, the play of Myra, Kyla, and Taylor Sutton coming in the game and impacting, whether it's a rebound, a loose ball, high hands, pushing in transition, just spacing and doing your job. It's not always about points. It's always about, if you'll do your job, good things are going to happen. And those three, I thought, really steadied the ship for us, at Chattanooga on Sunday.
Well, this has been such a busy stretch for your basketball team that we just talked about, and now you're getting ready. No games coming up this weekend until Monday against Sam Houston, a trip to Little Rock, and then home again against Winthrop. Have you had the message to your team that, look, SEC play may be a little closer than you guys realize?
Definitely. It's constantly educating and teaching. It's one game at a time, but basically, like we told them, we have a 3-game season right here before Christmas, and that preseason will end, and now we're going to conference play. So it's about growth and improvement. We want to be better today than we were yesterday. We have our practice guys all week. We're so excited to have them with us through Sunday, a chance to compete, get better. And then when they leave, it's going to be a whole nother ball game, as we head into Christmas and coming back for Tennessee because they'll be on break. So it's understanding the importance of each one. If we can keep our head and our heart headed in the right direction, we're not going to have to worry about our feet. Just keep growing and improving and staying positive and taking care of business in the classroom and on the court.
And how much do you like going on the road at this time of the year? We just went to Chattanooga, a team that won the SoCon a year ago, and we know it's a very good Little Rock team that's awaiting next week.
Yeah, no doubt. One of the hardest places in the country to play. They've already had a couple of SEC wins over Auburn. They had another SEC win over Vanderbilt and then beat Memphis at their place. So we've had a lot of film and opportunity to watch. But again, it's one of the most difficult places in the country. And when you schedule and people go, why'd you do that? But it's a chance for us to get better and go into an environment that's uncomfortable and difficult because we'll open up at Tennessee on the 30th. So another road experience to give us a chance to get better.
Coach Curry, we're looking forward to it. Just thank you so much for joining us here on Crimson Drive, driven by Tuscaloosa Toyota. And again, we got some big ball games coming up before Christmas. Can't wait to be back with you guys at Coleman Coliseum. But Roll Tide. Thank you.
Roll Tide. Thanks, Roger. Have a great week.
Our thanks to Coach Curry talking to us about women's basketball at Alabama. Again, the next home game coming up on Monday against Sam Houston at 11:30 for the 5th grade fast break. And we know that men's basketball will be back in action also at Coleman Coliseum. But coming up this weekend on Saturday at 9 o'clock, it'll be Alabama in a top 15 matchup against the Houston Cougars. Last week, it was I guess you could say, top 16 matchup between 3rd-ranked Gonzaga and number 16 Alabama. But the Crimson Tide showed they do belong in the nation's top 10 with that dominant win against the Zags. And Bryan Passink was there. He and I had a lot of time together in Seattle this past weekend getting ready for Alabama and Gonzaga, and he joins me now to talk about this great win for Nate Oates and the Crimson Tide men's basketball team. Bryan, it was a really successful trip, a really great day for Alabama athletics on Saturday. Just what was your reaction to everything that we saw from football to basketball and in between?
Well, it had to be the greatest day in Alabama sports history. At least it's been my experience. And we've had some great days. But when you talk about winning an SEC championship and one that many people that didn't expect that weren't wearing crimson and white on Saturday was just incredible. And to be in Seattle with a lot of Alabama fans, watched the first half at a sports bar across from Climate Pledge Arena. And every time Alabama scored, the place would erupt. And the Gonzaga fans would look around and say, okay, this is, what's football, first of all? They're not super familiar with that. And then it was pretty cool to see Alabama fans kind of take over this local sports bar right next to the arena. And then to cap it off with the best win of the college basketball season, not just for Alabama, but for anybody. Really the most impressive win of anyone, got the nation's attention in terms of college basketball, and to beat 2 top 5 teams in college basketball and football in the same day. It's never happened before. What a great day it was for all of us that love the crimson and white.
So a huge win for the Crimson Tide on Saturday, but let's talk about the week leading up to that ball game. Alabama had gone 2-1 at the ESPN Events Invitational in Orlando. Just what was the feeling as you were watching practice and getting ready for that game? Because Gonzaga is very talented, a national champion contender, also featuring one of the best front courts in college basketball.
Yeah, I thought after the Iona game, the team really turned the corner, and a lot of times a loss can help you do that. It can get the attention of everyone because Iona is a very good basketball team, but also a team that Alabama felt like they should have beaten if they would have played a little better. You got to give the Gales a lot of credit, but with what Alabama did against a very good Drake team, a team that's considered to be one of the top mid-major programs in the country, and then to just absolutely put it on Miami and put the Alabama's total game together on both ends of the floor in the second half. Really, the last 2 minutes of the first half and 20 minutes in the second half was as complete a performance as we've seen from this team, and really impressive. And I thought that gave them some confidence going out west to play a team that most people considered, even though they were number 3 in the country, probably the best team in college basketball, in the Gonzaga Bulldogs. They were 31-0 a year ago before they lost the national championship game, preseason number 1, super high expectations, and they've been demolishing people. They beat the number 2 team in the country by 20 points in a 1-versus-2 matchup against UCLA. Beat a top 5 team in Texas by double digits, was up 20 points in that game. And even though they lost a close game to Duke, this was a team in Gonzaga that most felt was either the best or certainly one of the best in college basketball. But the thing that I noticed in Seattle, the practices leading up to that game, was the confidence that Alabama had and the mindset they had. This was a team that went out west, went to Seattle to win the basketball game. They didn't go to just compete and play well and get a check mark next to strength of schedule. And to, they didn't just go to see where they stood. They went there to win the game. And that's something that I think may sound simple and a lot of people may say, but you can't fake that. It's not something that you can just talk about. It's something that you see. And I saw that in practice where this team came to win. And it's really a championship mindset, even though the battle for Seattle wasn't a championship event. It was definitely a championship mindset because this team went there to win. They didn't go there for moral victories, and they played like it. And I think that's what comes from having several guys back from an SEC regular season and tournament championship, a run to a Sweet 16. The expectations of this program are high, but nobody has higher expectations than these players or coaches. And for them to go out there and play the way they did, got the nation's attention. Very impressive win, but I thought it started leaving Orlando, or really in Orlando, and then going into that week of practice where they felt like they could be a better basketball team than they certainly showed against Iona. We saw that against Drake, definitely against Miami, and obviously against one of the top teams in the country, against Gonzaga.
Of course, Jaden Shackelford gets all the headlines for a career high, 28 points, matching a career high with that. But I thought his defensive effort as well in the game was really special. What did you see from Jaden as he went back to the West Coast, had a really good performance on Saturday?
Yeah, he's SEC Player of the Year, National Player of the Year, tied a career high in 28 points. But you're right. I mean, he is becoming an all-around player. He's worked on several aspects of his game that he wanted to improve on. We all know he could shoot it. We all know he could score. He certainly did that in Seattle. But his defense has continued to improve. I thought he was the most improved defender on the team last year. He's gotten better in that area this season. He's becoming more of a playmaker. He's able to score at the rim, but he's also looking for teammates and trying to develop some of those point guard skills that hopefully for him will translate to the next level when he decides, whether it's after this season or next, to try to play professional basketball. But he's someone that works extremely hard on his game and on his weaknesses, and love to see a guy that has taken what many would have considered maybe a weakness in his game his first year on the defensive end and turned that into a strength. I mean, he's become an excellent defender. I think he leads the team in charges taken right now. His own ball defense is outstanding. So that doesn't just happen by accident. It's hard work, it's focus, it's film study, it's working with the coaches, and he has turned into definitely one of the best players in college basketball.
Is the SEC Player of the Week, and the SEC Freshman of the Week is J.D. Davison, as we continue to see him emerge. Just what's allowing him to have success on the floor right now?
Well, we know about his athleticism, and there's nobody in the country, in my opinion, that has some of the physical tools that he has. And there's not a lot of players in the NBA that has the physical tools that JD has. But what's really impressed me since he's come to Tuscaloosa is his unselfishness, his high basketball IQ, his willingness to come off the bench. I mean, you talk about a guy that's a 5-star recruit, McDonald's All-American. He is someone that will have a chance to play in the NBA in the very near future. Some project him as a lottery pick, and he volunteers to come off the bench. It just shows you that his character and the unselfishness and team-first approach that I think is contagious. But he is a terrific player. I'm glad to see that his hard work is paying off. He's really worked on his ability to shoot the basketball from the perimeter. Goes 4 for 6 from the 3-point line against the Gonzaga Bulldogs. And if you have to crowd him at the 3-point line with his ability to get in the lane and make plays for himself and his teammates, look out. I mean, he becomes unstoppable. So this backcourt with Shackelford and J.D. Davison, of course, Javon Quinterly, who might be, and I think is the best point guard in the country, makes this backcourt the best backcourt in the country. Gonzaga, probably the best front court in the country, but right now there's not many backcourts, if any, as good as this Alabama's.
And you mentioned Gonzaga so good in the front court. Who were the guys that really stepped up the most for Alabama on Saturday, trying to guard players like Timmy and Holmgren? I mean, who were the players that were getting the key stops Alabama had to get?
Yeah, it was a lot of them. It starts with Angry Chuck, and he was terrific. Charles Bediako, the 7-foot center from Canada, who we didn't know how much or if any he was going to play in the game against Gonzaga, because twisted his ankle, wasn't full speed, didn't practice a couple days leading up to that game. And he came out and I thought maybe had his best game in an Alabama uniform. And he wasn't 100%, but for him to score 7 or 8 points, 7 or 8 rebounds, 6 blocks against that front line, he was a difference maker. And I thought showed how good he could be and needed every one of those points, rebounds, and blocks because with Drew Timme, Chet Holmgren, those guys have not been defended at the level that they saw on Saturday night with this Alabama front court. Charles Bediako led the way. Noah Gurley, I thought, was terrific. And with his interior defense, of course, Juwan Gary, just an absolute bulldog on the interior, great effort player. And Darius Miles, a guy that can play point guard for you. He can play power forward. He won the Hard Hat Award, and he had to guard some of those big guys on the inside. It just shows the versatility of him and this Alabama team.
Now the Crimson Tide, a week off for exams in terms of games between Saturdays, but now another Saturday's coming up. It's another top 15 matchup as the Houston Cougars come to town. You got to be really excited for Coleman Coliseum, and we hope a very full Coleman Coliseum coming up on Saturday.
Yeah, it should be a great atmosphere, and hopefully the fans will show their appreciation of this Alabama team and what they've accomplished coming off biggest wins that we've seen in the non-conference in a long, long time. So for that game to be Saturday night, yes, it's probably a little later than we would all want, especially us old folks. You'll be fine, Roger, at that game. But some of us, when we saw that tip time, it wouldn't have been our first choice. But as I've said on social media, Alabama got home these players and coaches got home at 5 a.m. after their last game. So if some of us have to get home at 11:30 or 12, I think we can do that to show our appreciation. And it's a huge game. I mean, Houston right now is, yes, they're top 15 in the AP. I think they're 4 or 5 in Ken Palm. They're 4 or 5 in the net. This is one of the best teams in the country. They could very easily be the number 1 team in the country if they didn't lose a close game, like a 2-point game to Wisconsin in the Maui Invitational. This is one of the toughest teams, if not the toughest in college basketball on the defensive end. So physical, rebound the ball. It's going to be a tough test. And I hope the Houston Cougars walk into an incredible atmosphere inside Coleman Coliseum on Saturday night.
Looking forward to it. Of course, last week a football win against Georgia led right into a win against Gonzaga in basketball. Maybe a Bryce Young Heisman Trophy can lead right into another basketball win. That would make for another fun Saturday, wouldn't it?
Oh, man, the best. I mean, first of all, Bryce Young is winning the Heisman, right? I mean, he's got president. Then I don't even know what we're doing. But what a night that will be to leading into the Houston game. Hopefully, another historic day in Alabama sports history.
Looking forward to it, Bryan. Just thank you so much for joining us. I look forward to hearing you, Chris, and Tom on the radio coming up on Saturday and for the rest of the year. But we had a great time in Seattle, a great win against Gonzaga. Now let's just keep it going. Roll Tide.
Can't wait for it. Roll Tide. Appreciate it.
Our thanks to number 22, Bryan Passink, for joining us. Of course, our Crimson Tide Sports Network radio analyst for men's basketball. He, Chris Stewart, Tom Stipe will be on the call coming up on Saturday for Alabama against Houston. Our coverage will start at 8 o'clock across the network. Don't forget, you can watch Chris and Bryan try to do a fist bump on Alabama-made three-pointers or, great dunks, anything great that happens in the ballgame. Those two will try to be in sync on the courtside cam coming up on Saturday. Make sure you watch that here on our Facebook page. Speaking of what's coming up, let's take a look at our weekend schedule as we have maybe a little lighter schedule across the network, but still a lot of key moments in Alabama sports coming up here on the Crimson Tide Sports Network. As we begin looking at our schedule, of course, Saturday, that courtside cam. Don't forget, 9 o'clock, Alabama men's basketball against Houston. Our coverage will start at 8 o'clock on the network. No game on Sunday, but then Monday will be busy. We'll have women's basketball against Sam Houston State. We'll have that coming up at 11:30 a.m. We'll also have the courtside cam for that ball game. And then Hey Coach, 6 to 7 p.m. across the radio network. Make sure you tune in for that, as well as Nate Oates will be joining us, most likely on the phone, as the Crimson Tide men's team will be on their way to Memphis to play coming up on Tuesday night, 8 p.m. tip-off. Our radio airtime will be 7 o'clock for the Crimson Tide against the Memphis Tigers. And then Wednesday will be a busy show for Signing Day, National Signing Day, coming up between 4 and 6 p.m. on SEC Network Plus the Alabama Athletics Facebook and Twitter pages, as our own Chris Stewart will be hosting that show along with Rashad Johnson and former Crimson Tide offensive lineman Barrett Jones, breaking down all the latest recruits who are signing up to play for the University of Alabama. And those as well are our social media networks at the bottom. Plenty of coverage coming up, a lot of courtside cams. Make sure you join us here on the network. Certainly thank all of you for joining us for this edition of Crimson Drive, driven by Tuscaloosa Toyota. Coming up next week, another programming note. Coming up next Tuesday, we will have a show for you, but we will not have one coming up on Thursday with women's basketball on the road against Little Rock. So we will have a show again coming up on Tuesday, right back here on the CTSN Facebook page, coming up at 2 p.m. And we certainly would love for you to join us again. I'd like to say a big thank you to Kristy Curry, along with John Parker Wilson, Bryan Passink for joining us. Thanks as well to Ethan Carabin, our outstanding Facebook Live producer, for putting all of this show together. For everybody with the University of Alabama and the Crimson Tide Sports Network, this is Roger Hoover saying thank you for watching this Thursday edition of Crimson Drive, driven by Tuscaloosa Toyota. I'll see you next at Coleman Coliseum coming up on Saturday for men's basketball as we look to continue the wins for Alabama. Roll Tide, everyone.